Welcome back to Big Moto Gaming, guys. We are doing our Dungeons and Dragons podcast. We're on episode 4. Four. Yeah. Hey, we're cruising now, guys. I'm Big Moto, and joining me for the broadcast is
Mike, aka Lost.
There we go, guys. We do a lot of. We have over. Well, if combined, we have 40 years of Dungeons and Dragons experience. If you want to think about it that way. We are Dungeons and Dragons veterans. We're both are forever DMs, or sometimes I'm actually a player. And lately, I've been able to be a player for the last couple of years. It actually feels good to have the flexing of being a player yet again. But Lost, I am a player in one of your games currently, where we're doing a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition game, and we are just got back from. What do you call it?
TPK.
A TPK, yes. And I thought my character was going to die again.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a second one as well.
Yeah.
For a minute. I was like, how? I leveled you all. You're all more beefy characters. What is going on?
Yep. I'm like, I've been with a paladin. I'm like, we have some self-reses, or reses, HP healing. And we know there's potions around, little metagame knowledge, but I went with a whole AC build, and I still just got beat into the ground like it was nothing, and I couldn't believe that.
Yep. And it's all open rolls too, so there's no fudging of the dice.
No fudging of the dice, guys. And if you missed our last podcast, we talk about that we don't believe in fudging dice for anything. It is a rule of thumb for us. I don't know. Lost, what made you feel like you shouldn't fudge dice rolls too much?
For me, I think it's just I like to let the story build, and there's a few times where like I had something planned out, and then the dice didn't pan out that way, and then we went in a completely different direction. And then afterwards, when I look back, I was like, man, what I had planned paled into comparison to what I just pulled out of my behind and came up with on the fly.
That is some of the funnest things is actually when the story goes off the rail and you actually created a bigger monstrosity than you ever thought was possible. I've had that happen several campaigns.
Yep.
It's like, do you ever try to get them back on the way that you wanted them to steer, or do you?
Yeah, I would say so. It depends on the plot point, right? Because there's certain points that like essentially are mandatory for the players to be able to like do, so that way the story progresses. Now, how they get that, like if it was, let's say, like the main plot point was, there's this guy at this particular tavern or whatever that they should have stopped at. Well, if they don't, and they go somewhere else, then, oh, guess what? He just so happens to be there. Plug and play on those things. Or if it's, they have to find something or get a clue, like how that clue comes in, or you just change it up so that way they still get the information and then can progress the main story.
Yep. I'm like, I think plug and play is a wonderful thing. Do you ever do a plug and play with? I watch a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, YouTube and whatnot, and people will, if you sub to my Patreon, you can get these things, and they make full adventures that are all plug and play. Do you sign up for anything that like that, or is all plug and play what you think in your head?
What I think in my head, although I've only ever done one Patreon, and I'm trying to remember why I even subbed to it. There was basically some content that I wanted, and I want to say it had to have been like, it was for Waterdeep, I want to say.
Okay.
It was like they revamped the whole Waterdeep adventure, and I was like, oh, I'm getting ready to run Waterdeep, and I was looking at it, and there was a bunch of different like changes, and like they fleshed out a lot of the other factions and clarified a lot of the like ambiguity type stuff, and I was like, oh, I like that idea. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll spend the $2 for a month subscription and get the stuff that I need, and
okay,
So
okay, we did not discuss this ahead of time. So, all the listeners and viewers, we try to talk a few things out ahead of time to give ourselves a general idea. But this thing, I forgot to actually talk to you about. So, Dungeons and Dragons Improv has their 50th anniversary, and then on D&D Beyond, there's a new adventure module coming out, like something of Vecna. Vecna. There's a new
Vecna, yeah.
Yep, there's a new one, but for a limited time and limited time only, there is a pre-order that is only available until May. Of this pre-order, and a lot of people are bad mouthing Dungeons and Dragons or Hasbro for making it so that it's a FOMO. And what do you think of Dungeons and Dragons trying to do something like that, where the adventure path this is only for pre-order? Is this like level 1 through 3 adventure? I want to say 1 through 3. It could be levels 1 through 5, but it's just like it's to prep you to get ready for the actual full level 1 through 20 one that's going to be coming out. What do you think of the FOMO version to get you prepped for it?
I think it's ridiculous. Like, when companies do stuff like that, right, and it's a limited time, here's this adventure, here's X book that you can only get if you do it, within this time frame. All that does is force people that either missed out or missed it because life happens, couldn't afford it at the time or whatever, to then find a torrent of the file and get them illegally.
Yep.
And so, if there was a, hey, pre-order it and you get 20 or 30% off as a pre-order, I'm all for that type of stuff.
Oh yeah. Like that's just good tactics in general, right, to me.
Yep. But when you have stuff and then people can no longer get it the official route, correct, they will then turn towards unofficial means and get it pirated. That's just that. It is the reality of how that will pan out.
Yep. I'm like some D&D news I was listening to down in South America. I think it's Brazil. D&D has stopped making their 5th edition content down there, and because of cost-effective reasons, a book of Dungeons and Dragons is one book would cost the resident of Brazil 1/4 of their monthly income. So yeah. So no one's buying them, so they're decided that they're no longer selling them, which is now going to make it so everybody is going to pirate them to do anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, because here's the thing, right? If you really want something and you cannot get it officially, or you can get it officially, but it's going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money, you will find a way to acquire what you want as cheap as possible.
Correct.
And I'm not endorsing pirating stuff. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just speaking the reality of what will happen.
We know what reality is.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. We have a few questions that we got from the audience, and I want to run with those before we get to our main story. First one was for both of us was, what is our favorite maximum amount of players that we want in a game? I personally like the idea of having 5 players, 4 to 5. And so I feel like 5 is now my new max, because almost all adventures are based, in my opinion, games are meant for a 4-player team. If we have a 5th one, they are more likely to survive, in my head. And since I don't fudge dice, that is one way to stack it for the players thing. So that is my ideal amount of players. How about yourself?
Ideal, I would agree, 4 to 5. Minimum of 3, I would say.
Minimum of 3.
So if you have a group of 4, I can't even say minimum of 3, because if you have a higher table number, it's, it kind of varies on where the story is and stuff like that. But in general, right, I would say minimum of 3 players. And then what's your maximum though? At a table that, like, not what you've ever run, but like if you were starting a new game and you would only want this amount of players.
If I feel like if I had 8 players, it is pushing me to a limit where I could I don't like everybody else if the spotlight's not on them. I don't want everybody else basically have to sit there and look at their phones because they're waiting for their turn. And 8 is that really pushing that limit in my head. And max ever. Unfortunately, I think I've had 16 players at one time with a co-DM, and that was young and foolish. I want to say at that time it was a learning experience. So I guess there's nothing wrong with having a learning experience from it. But
I'm the same with you. About 8 players is my max that I am really willing to do. Like if it's a one shot and it's like I'm at a game store and it's like a promotion, like, hey, people can come in. Sure. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
But I just thought of another question that's on this lines.
Okay. All right.
How do you combat the time suck that is a turn?
Ooh.
Yeah. You want me to tell you mine?
As a DM, we're trying to counter it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, you'll have, right? Because you have those players that are like, they know what they're doing. They're paying attention.
Yep.
Their turns take 10 seconds.
Yep.
Right? And then you have that other player that's like, oh, well, it's my turn? All right, let me look up the spell that I want to use. Let me do this. Let me look up in the rule book for this. And then it's like a 5-minute turn, and you're like, man, come on.
The only thing I really do is I normally, I'll say, okay, so for example, Lost is your turn, and then I'll say, the Drunken, you're next on deck. So they're already thinking ahead that their turn is coming. That's about all the more I get. Other than that, then because I play a lot of in-game, I can just kind of look at the person or help prepare them. Like, because there's some new players that just don't know the spells. I'm like, I'll even call other players, like, for example, our buddy Butters, who knows a player's handbook like the back of his hand. How did that get there? And I'll have him looking up things real quick. So I actually enlist a lot of people, I guess, when it's a person's turn that takes too long.
Yep. So now I will caveat, the way that I do it is definitely a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Brutal, I guess is the best word to describe it.
Ooh.
Although if it's like a brand new player, right, obviously I make exceptions to brand new players and stuff like that. Right. But if they're they played a few games, they already know how the game is going, right? I have less like sympathy for it.
Yep.
Depending on the game, I will give, like, so we'll say D&D, right? I will give them whatever their score is in like intelligence. That's how many seconds they have to complete their turn. Anything or at least like start doing it. And then if they are still looking something up and that time has elapsed, I'm like, hey, your character hesitates. You lost your turn. Next player.
I've never been so bold, I guess you could say, as a DM. I've never been so bold. I have pestered people, I guess, or almost, because since I'm a large individual, intimidated some people by staring at them enough, or what you could do, and I'll do kind of these kind of motions because it is. Because as a DM, you need to make sure you have pacing for the entire table, and when the entire table stops and starts looking around and is no longer immersed in it, that's when you're like, okay, buddy, we need you to start rolling, doing something here. I can totally understand if the previous turn just screwed up everybody's tactical combat. I can see where like the next person might be like, oh, son of a gun.
Right.
That might take a while. Boy, I'm trying to think. At higher levels, I think at higher levels, turns just take longer in general because you have way more options. So
well, they do. Like, it's not going to be like if you're actively doing things, right? I don't start the timer, right? It's one of those when you're like, oh, it's my turn. It's like, oh, timer's starting.
Yep.
Like, if you're, you know, I don't start it immediately on your time or on your turn. It's more of like if we're stopping because you didn't plan something or like, you know, and if it's like that one time things, like if pacing is all right and like you have that one off, like generally you're gonna get, you know, probably a couple of minutes. Yep. But it's once that starts becoming a habit and then like multiple people start doing it, that's where it's like, hey guys, for, you know, rate of play, it's now, you know, I'm instituting this rule, and people are like, ooh, then I start seeing people get off their phones a lot more, and then they'll start paying attention because they're like, because that's one thing that drives me nuts is when it's like, oh, it's your turn, or, you know, you're like, hey, so and so, it's your turn, and they're like, okay, what's going on? And you're like,
I don't understand how people. I don't understand how people could do that to themselves. Like, because, you know, I have not terrible ADD, but I have ADD, and I can pay attention. But well, I'm lucky for that aspect that Dungeons and Dragons is my normally is my hyper fixation. And so I get a little bit of a superpower for that one. But I'm like, how have you not paid attention this entire time? Oh.
Yep, and like, you know, I can understand like details, like if they were like, oh hey, like you did this and that, or you know, what I mean? Like, all right, what's like just the blatant of like, all right, my turn's done. Let me go onto my phone, and then it's like, hey, it's your turn, and they're like, okay, what happened? It's like, well, why are you here? Like,
yes, I 100% agree with that one. I have been really fortunate. It has been a very long time since I've had that kind of player where they're just only on their phone in between and they don't even know what's going on. I'm very fortunate for that. Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of viewers out there or listeners that our hats off to those DMs and players, because it does waste everybody's time when you have that one person who does not want to pay attention, in my opinion. Hats off to you guys. I feel bad for you.
Yeah, we had in one of the games I was playing in, actually. I feel like I talked about this before, so if I did, sorry, listeners. I have crap memory. So yeah. Anyway, he had, I forget what he was. He was like a cleric or something. He had shadows though. He had like 4 shadows, and his turns were like 20-minute turns.
Oh.
In combat, right? And like the DM didn't want to say no to like his build or whatever, but he was one of those people that every turn, even if he was doing the same thing, he's like, okay, I'm gonna have him do this. Let me look this up. And it's like, dude, make shorthand or something. Like, this is taking forever. Yep. And my character ended up dying, so I made a necromancer, and I was talking to the DM about it, and she was like, you're gonna have how many? And I had like 60 skeletons, because we were like, I forget what level we were, right? And she was just like, I could see like just the visible like, oh crap,
mental strain.
And I was like,
just hit.
Yep, I'm just like, we're never gonna get through a turn. It's gonna be one turn and it's over. I was like, no, trust me, I will be done in 2 minutes. And she's like, I doubt it. She's like, go ahead. So the next session I did, and I had them all in like my bag of holding type thing. And I just pulled them out, dumped them out. I had like all my D20s. I was like, all right, they're all going to attack and do this. And I just, here's all the hits. Here's that. And I was literally like, it was like a minute 45 and my turn was done. And I looked at the player and I was like, that's how you handle multiple NPCs that you control. Plan that shit out.
I'm like, what also happens there is you're not trying to be the main hero of the game. Yeah. Also, I feel like a lot of people that take a lot of turn, like explaining things and do these things, they want to be the hero of the adventure, and it's like, it's a group game. Remember, chat. What the god? I've been screaming so much. Remember, listeners, it is a group game. Make sure you guys are playing group activities. Okay, another thing real quick. Another question we had asked to us is, how often do you feel like you help the players? Well, the question was, how often do we fudge our rolls to help players? And like we were just saying, I don't fudge dice, but I'll do other things to try to help players. How about yourself?
I very rarely ever fudge dice. I'm trying to think. I probably haven't really fudged dice definitely in a few years. But some things that I do which I guess technically like fudging, is if I have something that like absolutely has to go a certain way, like in this campaign, otherwise like the whole thing is going to get skewed or just nothing else will fall in line, you know, I will make it almost like a cutscene.
Yep.
And then if players will try to like, oh, can I do this? You know, I'll say sure, and they'll roll, and it doesn't really matter what they roll.
Yep.
They're going to get the same answer. So, you know, they don't know that I'm doing that at the time, but it's one of those like it's a DM GM controlled like interaction, and you know, I'll give them, you know, bits and pieces of stuff or whatever, but you know, they could roll till their heart's content or not roll anything. The result is going to be the exact same.
Yeah, like I also do the cutscene thing, and I also will do it doesn't matter what you roll during this cutscene, I need this to happen to progress anything. And I'll tell you right now, there's a train of thought out on the internet that says that we are the bad guys for doing that, and I'm going to counter that with the DMs need to have fun too. We have created this world. Let us have our little cutscene so we can actually help progress the story that we're all involved with. Like, I know that for some reason there's a lot of players or D&D activists, if you would, that are like, you're taking away player agency. I'm like, yeah, technically I did during that time, and I'm trying to help by doing this.
Sure did. Sure did. You know, it's one of those where it's like, so playing Curse of Strahd, like I had one where, you know, like they're just starting out, they're like level 3 or 4, and they're coming against Strahd, which is the final boss, right? He makes a few different appearances and stuff like that. And the first time the players were trying to like, I'm just gonna shoot him. I'm gonna, you know, we're gonna attack him. And so it's one of those where it's like in the beginning, it's like, look, I get it. I don't really care what you roll unless it's like a nat 20. I'm gonna let you graze him type of thing.
Yep.
But, you know, because sometimes, right, you could be horribly outgunned, and sometimes the dice will just fall how they fall, and it completely messes everything up. And although 99% of the time I'm okay with it, you're not going to kill Strahd at level 3 or 4.
Yep.
And when he's just basically going to show you how horribly outgunned you are. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, they try to do things. I'll add extra stuff where, you know, they go to attack him and he just grabs the sword out of midair and stops it. And you know what I mean? So then it's like, the players are like, what just happened? Is he that strong? And then it puts that little bit of fear in them too.
A little bit of fear.
We have to like straight up level. Like we need this equipment. Like we cannot beat him right now.
That is the spice of life. Is in D&D as a DM, you need to have some players to have a little spice of fear. Needs to be sprinkled in somewhere. I think actually a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, if it's too easy or whatnot, too much of a cakewalk, I feel like a lot of players are just like all lollygagging. But as soon as you put a little thread of fear in there, that grabs their attention more than anything else. And you need to have a little spice of fear in everything.
Yep.
I say this right now. So in my current gaming group, sorry for all those guys who are watching. I'm gonna poke holes at some of my recent DMs. They have a lot DM NPCs. Not just my current DM, but my whole group. And I have noticed because, like I said, I have that hyperfixation that I'm never in true danger. Because the DMPC will come and save the group if we ever get too far too bad. And my current DM of our 5th edition game, she does not do that. she's too new to have the DMPC come save us. I was put in death save several times, but I've noticed the other DMs, veteran DMs, everything else, they have safety nets, and it automatically takes out the immersion in my head. I'm like, there's a safety net. I don't like this. Something's broken in my head that I know for a fact there's a safety net. I don't know how to say that, so I apologize, because I do know a lot of my current fellow players, and maybe even my DM actually listen to this podcast. And
yeah, the only time I ever do like a safety net is I'll make an encounter specifically overpowered, and like this would be one of the times that I would fudge dice, if you will, would be like I am purposely, intentionally trying to do a TPK but not actually kill the players, right? So it's like my goal is basically just to put them down and then have like a side, a different hero come in and basically like vanquish them and save the day type thing.
Okay.
As a story point. So it's like super hard battle, it literally intentional to have them like, hey, like, if I have 4 or 5 players, you're probably gonna have 3 or 4 that are making death saves, and like one character that's holding on by a thread before this guy, busts in and like
that. See, now that would be more interesting, because you feel like that the character is actually, the DM's actually coming to save you instead of a safety net where it'll never progress to this because there's a safety net there. Or almost like we call it when bowling. What are those side rail things?
Bumpers.
Bumpers. Yeah, I'm like, the dang bumpers are up on some of these campaigns. I don't know if it's because I also have in some of my previous games, there's a lot of like we're new to the system, so there's a lot of bumpers, if you would, for that, and other things like that. But it just I don't know. The way I analyze things, I just like I can see that the safety nets, and my brain's just like something switches off, and I'm like, I'm not as immersed in that when I see safety nets, and I don't know what it is. It is something wrong with. I feel like it's something wrong with me because everybody else is having a good time, but as soon as I see that safety net, you can tell. I don't know if anyone at the table can tell, but I shut down. I get quiet and I don't do anything. I'm like, there's a safety net. I've lost immersion.
My help is no longer required.
Right.
When you're talking about the immersion, though, and we're just talking about this, it just made me think of an idea of how to do, not force immersion, but you remember in the other podcasts how I said I feel like people were talking about the tunes, right?
Yep.
And I just thought of a way to probably combat that, to make people more. Again, it'd have to be per table type thing, but before the campaign starts, right? You tell the players like, hey, everybody, you can make whatever you want. Like, I generally allow the first 3 levels to adjust anything on your character sheet.
Yep.
You thought you're gonna like this race, you thought you're gonna like this class, you thought you're gonna like whatever, right? Between sessions, you're like, hey, I'm not having fun with this. It's like, oh, you leveled up. All right, well, instead of a human wizard, now I'm playing a gnome barbarian or something ridiculous, right? You're like, I'm gonna try that out instead. Switch it around or whatever. After that, though, you're like, all right, there are several pre-gens that I have. If your character dies, you're only allowed to play one of these pre-gens. You can choose which one or pick one at random.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is the pre-gen that you must play if your character dies.
That is so interesting, a pre-gen like that.
Right? Because then people are like, oh.
I would have fun as a player going, okay, I failed to this point, and now I got a pre-gen with a pre-written story, which will be help. That just makes me sound interesting right there.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it because, like I said, my biggest problem is I have a lot of players that just don't. They're like, oh, if my character dies, I'll just make a new one. It's not a big deal. And it's like, man, if my character dies, I feel bad. Like this sucks. Like, and if I had to only play a pre-gen and I couldn't make my own character again, I'd be like, ugh, like, ugh.
Like, I like when my current paladin in your game, like I thought I was gonna die. I'm like, I've never actually really played that paladin before. I've maybe used him as an NPC or whatnot, or at least his name and whatnot. But he's also a World of Warcraft character, so I have a lot of story in my head. So he doesn't feel like a toon to me. He's a real character, right? And he was on 2 death saves, chat. 2 death saves, and I was like, I hate everything. But I don't know how I got all 3 magically like that. I was just like, oh my god. Naturally like, too. Didn't even have the healing potion until I stabilized. That was nail biting for me.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised you guys did so bad on that.
I'm gonna blame Fantasy Grounds for all the for anything good or bad. I'm blaming Fantasy Grounds.
Yep.
All right. Another question we got asked was, what do we do when we catch another player cheating, or what have we done catching a player cheating? And I've been racking my brain thinking about that one. I cannot remember the last time I had a player actively cheat that I feel like was, like there's people that get things wrong, but I can't think of the last time I had somebody actively cheat. So, Lost, maybe you have more experience there.
So there's really only one time that I could really think about it, and that was a couple of years ago. I was gaming at a game store, and it was during COVID, right? So we all had to be separated fairly far apart, right? Okay. And like there was like 2 people per table type thing, right? And my son, he was not the cheater, although I swear to God he had to have been cheating. So for those of you who don't know, so I was playing, we were doing Savage Worlds. And for those of you who don't know, in Savage Worlds, your dice explode if you roll the max on it, and you continue to roll until you don't roll a max on the die, right? So if you roll a 6, you roll a 6 again and again and again, right? You have, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, whatever, however many 6s that you roll, right? And it adds up, and that's what you rolled. And my son was rolling, I would say on average out of a D6, and he was getting like a 30 probably every 3rd roll. What? Thing on average, right? Like ridiculous. Like he had his dice tower, he would just slam him in the dice tower. Oh, that exploded. Explodes. So there was a point that I was like, I talked to him at one point, and I thought he was cheating. He's like, I am not cheating. And I was like, okay, you're a 12-year-old, right? You just don't want to get busted, is what I was thinking, right? Had the conversation with him, and then the owner of the game store was in my game, and she, like, I talked to her about it. I was like, because my son was sitting by her, I was like, can you just watch his rolls? And she was like, yeah. And then he had that same thing that night, and it was really high rolls, and she was like, he's not cheating.
Oh boy.
But what happened, because my son was rolling so high, legitimately,
one of the other players, somebody.
It did, and one of the other players started rolling really high, and she had kind of caught him doing it, so she actually had that conversation with him, and then backfilled me, and then we were kind of watching for it a little bit, but then he tamed it down after that.
Okay.
And my son continued to roll stupid good in that game. It was so ridiculous. It was like, there was times where I was just getting up. I'd be like, all right, Logan, it's your turn. And I'd just get up and walk over, and I'd just watch him. And then, sure as shit, oh, I got a 47. Are you kidding me? On a D6. You know what I mean? It's just like,
oh my.
I'm like, what is going on? And like, they weren't loaded dice, right? Because I know what my son's dice are. I know what he has because I'm the one that bought it for him.
Oh, actually, that's a funny thing. I almost cheated in a game of Dungeons & Dragons because my wife, who is was a dice goblin, or actually upgraded to dice dragon. There was some. She bought cheater dice. She knows they're cheater dice. They're like 20 on one end and a 20 on the other end, so there's no natural one. It was just on a shelf, and she's never used them before because she knows they're cheater dice. And one time I was going through. Normally, for everyone who's watching at home, if I have a set of dice that have killed a player, I take that set of dice and I put them on a shelf. Like, okay, you're a player killer dice, and I'll bring a new set of dice in. So, because I don't know, I swear to goodness gracious, some dice just rolled unnaturally high, and okay, this is that set. And one of the things I grabbed was the cheater set, not knowing that was. Like, I pulled that off the shelf, and I put it on and got ready to go, and then my wife's like, what happened to that set of dice up there? I'm like, what? She goes, that's the cheater set. I'm like, we have cheater sets here? I didn't even know about them, and I'm like, how long did we have those?
That's funny. You know, talking about the different dice, I had a set of player kill dice. They were blood red with like a black inlay for the letters.
Okay.
And whenever the players were doing really well, I would pull those out, and my players knew. They're like, "Oh crap, we're doing too good, guys. We gotta tone it down." But it's funny because like it was just one of those, like, every time I would try to do something obnoxious against, like, they're just my obnoxious dice. Like, you want to pull something and do something off the wall that'd be like massive penalties. It's probably going to roll a nat 20. You're just trying to do, something very simple. It's going to do the exact opposite. It's going to crit fail you. It was just one of those, like, how often it was like, oh, this is my, like, I'm going to do something stupid. All right. The dice were like, yes, I approve of this message.
I think, now you said that, I'm like, I feel like I have a set of dice like that myself. Like, mundane things, nope, you're tripping and falling. You want to do this cool trick shot, you're making that.
Just remember, listeners, dice have personality.
They do. They honest to goodness do. I do. Have you ever? I've gotten so mad at dice, I've chucked them across the room. Have you ever done that?
Nope, I am not a dice chucker. The closest time I've ever got to chuck anything was when I was playing Dark Souls, the original Dark Souls. And I was up till like 3 a.m. trying to get my stupid body back, and I about chucked the controller because I died like another time.
Yep. And Dark Souls is good at that.
Yep. And I think at that point I turned it off, and I didn't pick it back up. I was like, this game is taking me off way too much.
Okay, I do know of one time I've seen you chuck something, and that was when Butters killed off your changeling. You took that pen.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
You just about stabbed him, and he had no clue that he was so. Our buddy Butters is so anti metagame.
No. Yes, he's so anti metagame. But this goes back to what we were just talking about paying attention to the stupid thing and how metagaming is sometimes acceptable, right? When a player is getting introduced to the campaign and we're describing what is happening. You don't just leave it up to chance to shoot one of them. You shoot the one that you know is the bad guy to allow the player to do it. You don't crit the player that's trying to join the campaign and kill the character off before they do anything.
Yeah. So, Chad, Russ was just getting into a game. One of our epically large games that we had in high school. And I think for some reason you couldn't play for like 2 or 3 weeks, and you were just finally bringing in the character, and our buddy Butters crit insta-killed him in the first turn and did not realize what was happening because he was not paying attention. He just saw, because I know your character was a changeling, he just saw 2 drow fighting, and he thought this was not unusual. I'm going to kill them both. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, are you sure? Like, I'm doing, like, all the things, like, what are you doing? And he goes, yeah, I'm rolling. And he freaking,
And it was one of those you're like, well, which one are you attacking then? And he's like, the one on the left, and which was my character. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like,
yeah, rolls all the dice. You're staring at him.
Here's all the damage. And I'm like, well, my character's freaking dead. And I don't even remember what I did. I chucked something. You're right.
You had your pencil and you chucked it at him. That's all I remember. That was the most aggressive you've ever been at D&D. You took that pencil and because it finally hit him in the head, and he finally realized, like, what just happened? Why is he mad?
Yep.
Finally paid attention that he was doing something wrong.
Yep.
That still makes me laugh to this day, because I was just like, what's going on? Like, as a DM, I was like, there's nothing I could do to, like, even bring in something to block this. Like, that was a simple, we're bringing another character in. Hey, guys, this is Mike's character, and I'm not paying attention, so I killed it.
And you even said I was fighting a drow. Like, that was like, it was... Yes.
Yeah, I gave you 10 minutes allowed you to get some spotlight on you, because you haven't had any gameplay. You finally got in there, and I think that's what Butters must have just, like, the light switch went off. He was not paying attention because you were doing things, and then he's like, oh, look at that. I had 2 drow. I'm going to kill the one on the left.
Yep.
And Butters
Immersion.
is the
Don't
least...
break it.
Butters is, what do you call the term? Not malicious. Like, he was not trying to go out and...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes. Although I was upset in the moment, like, I hold no grudge, Butters. I hold no grudge.
I'm gonna have to show this part
now.
42 minutes into the podcast, I'm gonna send that to Butters. Oh, okay. And then our last question from the audience was, have we ever purposely killed a player that is a dink, or you really hated that character, they're doing such a bad job disrupting the thing that you killed their character just because, kind of thing? And I'm trying to think of, I've been trying to think of because I've had enough obnoxious players, and I've even been an obnoxious player in the past, that kind of just happens, like you don't mesh with the DM or something like that. I cannot think of a time where I said, I had a premeditative thought that this character needs to die at this point in time, and screw the dice. I've never really done the lightning comes from the sky and strikes you kind of thing.
I've never done that where it's like, oh, your character's dead. Why? Because I'm the GM and I said so. Like, I've never done anything like that. But I've definitely twisted that character's fate to where they take the brunt of attacks, or, you know what I mean? Like, the spotlight is on them, essentially, to where, arrows are going towards them. The attacks, like the big bad is focusing his attention on him or her, focusing on them and just trying to like not necessarily kill their character, but like the odds are not looking well for them to survive.
Okay. And that is actually an interesting segue into our big thing. So in my last game I did of 5th edition, we did over the weekend. We have a paladin who's a tank AC paladin, and I noticed in D&D, just because you have the highest AC doesn't make you a tank. It just makes it so you're hard to hit. It's hard to what do you call it? Force things to attack you, because if you're constantly missing you, it's they rather hit the easier target most of the time, and just because you have high AC. And then he made a comment to our DM that I'm not aggroing the creatures. I'm aggroing the DM to make them target me. I try to piss off the actual DM to make them target that player. I'm like, ooh, that's a weird fourth wall breaking metagame. Have you ever experienced that before?
No. Definitely not. But I would caution that player, unless that DM is rolling open rolls, you might not want to tick off the DM. Because just remember this famous saying, when the GM smiles, it's already too late.
That is a fact. That is a fact. And then viewers and listeners at home, I wanted to my last game, our DM took an entire week and she planned out a epic roleplay session, epic we call it war battle, and all these like big interesting things that she put a lot of time and effort in. But once again, once it touches a player, nothing goes correctly. And I can see at the end of the campaign that she wishes everything would have went a little bit smoother. And then, so my big question to that is, what do we do as DMs, GMs, whatever? What I say? What happens when all your best plans just absolutely fail, and like, how do you recover from that? Unless anything like that, where your heart, something you got ripped out of your chest, and how do you recover from that?
One word: improv.
Improv.
And that is where I would say a good 75% of my sessions are improv. Unless I'm running a module. But even then, a lot of the stuff is improv because most of the time I don't like everything in the module. So I'll change stuff up and just kind of go with it. But yeah, improv. And you're not writing. I mean, you got to remember as a GM, you're writing a story, but you're not, don't get too far ahead of yourself, because you need to write ideas and not set things in stone, because essentially you're coming up with the idea, and think of it like your players are helping you write that story. So don't say this battle is going to get won, because, hey, maybe it doesn't.
Yep.
So, look at it as a collaborative effort with your players, and you're taking the spark, throwing it out there, and the players are going to fan that into a fire, and then see how that turns out. So, but yeah, improv. Don't waste your time on all the little minutia of details, because no plan survives first contact.
Like, as I also second that. I think improv is actually one of the greatest. If you could be good at anything as a DM, improv has to be number one. Just to be pull stuff out of your hat. And I just feel really bad for the like I said, new DM, because she's not prepared. I hate to say that, because she's trying to be prepared, but she's not prepared for that kind of improv, and it's going to be a learning curve. There's no good way to put we're going to be testing some metal here, and yeah, it is. I remember being younger and all my plans would fall apart, and that is a shot to the heart. I swear, when you're like, that was supposed to go way differently, and I invested all my energy, and like she said, she put an entire week of thinking of the roleplay and everything else, and in the 10-minute roleplay that she was able to have, it did nothing really cooperated. And I will admit, for everyone at home, because I did not help the situation as a player, because we were supposed to do, everything was supposed to be, if you talked, it was going to be what's called dungeon voice, I think it's called, where or dungeon talk, I guess it's called, where whatever you do or say is going to be always in character. Yeah, because she's like she's trying to get us hyped for the role play, so this is all in character. And and we, as players, we have 5 players, and we did not have a good enough strategy between us 5, and then we started bickering with each other, and to the point that the DM's roleplay got shut down, and yeah, I'm looking back at it and I'm like, I really wish I didn't ever even open my mouth for the whole situation. Just like there was actual like in-game little bickering, which it is roleplay, it does happen, but when you're in the presence of the queen, little things like that should be put aside. I don't know. I just I'm looking back at it, and I have regrets with my own roleplay, and I could just tell, like, way she left there, like, she was not happy with what happened, so I feel bad.
Yep. Happens sometimes, though, you know, like I said, you can have the best laid plans, and, like, you can go super detailed and intricate on the, you know, every facet at this point in the campaign, and they're like, oh, cool, we got this mission. All right, let's just go straight there. And you're like, you're not even going to investigate. You're not going to try to get more information. You're just going straight there. Sweet. And then the next time you're like, all right, well, they're not going to ask anything. So you don't prep anything at all.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I'm going to talk to this guy that's at the bar. I'm going to go here. Oh, I want to go to the library and investigate, see what I can come up with. And then you're like, really? Be consistent.
Oh, yeah. That is actually, I think, the worst thing of Dungeons & Dragons is, like, can we have some sort of consistency with something?
Yep.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Let's see. Ross, do we have any other topics we want to bring up? Other than you yawning?
I thought it went a little bit ago. Yeah, I thought it went a little bit ago, and I forgot about it now.
Oh,
I
gosh,
cannot
right.
remember.
We'll have to write it down for notes for episode 5.
Yeah.
Everybody watching at home, if you have any thoughts or comments or anything like that, make sure you guys drop it in the comments section. We do go through everything, and obviously we do bring them up. And then we have little, little snippets of the podcast go out to our my TikTok and Instagram, and then I wanted to let everybody at home. If you guys see a live stream going on, that's me. I normally do a live stream of World of Warcraft early in the mornings. It's been going good. If you guys want to stop in, say hi. I stream everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Trovo, and Kick, Big Moto Gaming. Love to see you guys there. Loss, how about yourself? You just like being the DM?
No. Yep. I'm here.
You're just here.
I'm not a streamer. I'm here.
He likes to be just being him, which we take him for. All right, Loss, I'm signing off. How about yourself?
Yep. I'm gonna do some troubleshooting on my laptop.
There we go. All right, everybody, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. Love you guys, and we're signing off. Have a good night, or good day, or good evening.